Chapter 1. A Secret Behind the Magic. A hired car glided smoothly into the pickup area in front of the NBA advertising agency in London. Two advertising agency executives climbed into the car at the chauffeur's directive. They had no idea where they were going or why. They, at least, knew they weren't being kidnapped. They were only going on a secret assignment. The executives settled into the back seat and watched the buildings go by as they were driven through the heart of London. They soon arrived at a business office, where they were greeted by Darren Brown, a well-known illusionist in the United States and the United Kingdom, and the host of a popular television show titled Mind Control. As they sat down in a conference room at Brown's direction, they were given this challenge: design a logo and strapline for a new chain of stores. The product? Taxidermy, the stuffing and preserving of dead animals. Before he allowed the advertising executives to begin their design work, Brown announced he had already drawn up some ideas and had put them in a sealed envelope, which he had placed under a stuffed cat on the conference room table. Brown gave them 30 minutes to complete their task, and he left the room. The admin immediately launched into full brainstorming mode. They identified various ideas and themes, threw out most of them as ridiculous, and then focused on one idea and developed it as best they could in the time given. Brown returned to the room, and the men revealed their ideas. Logo: a base sitting on a cloud playing a harp. Slogan: Animal Heaven, the best place for the best dead animals. Brown complimented them on their creativity and then asked them to open the sealed envelope he had left in the room. They opened the envelope, and as they read the contents, the blood seemed to drain from both of their faces. One of the men dropped his head into his hands as he thought, "I've been gutted." Brown's document showed the sketch of a logo with a base sitting on a cloud playing a harp. The slogan assigned to the logo read, "Creature Heaven, where the best dead animals go." The wording was not identical, but it was close enough to be uncanny. How did Darren Brown influence these two highly paid, creative professionals whose livelihood was to come up with original ideas to draw nearly the same logo and write nearly the same slogan that he had developed? Was there a secret? Yes. As the admin walked out of the building to get back into the car Brown had sent, their attention was caught by a painting on the wall of a nearby building, plainly in their line of sight as they had arrived at Brown's office. It was a painting of a bay. As they reviewed the route to the meeting, they noted that they had first been driven past the London Zoo. At a stoplight by the zoo, a group of people walked across the crosswalk. All were wearing light blue sweatshirts with the word "Zoo" printed across the front. At the next stoplight, to their right, they had seen a department store window with a big harp on display. They were then driven past a coffee shop with a chalkboard outside that included the words, "Creature Heaven." As they had entered Brown's building, they had walked past a man holding a flip chart with more subtle cues. In the time that it took to drive these two admin across town, Darren Brown had cued, influenced, triggered, and motivated these men to think and act in a very specific way. Scary, huh? When I first read about this incident, I was so fascinated by it that I decided to test it on several audiences, with a combined total of 9,000 people. One of the audiences had 4,000. healthcare designers, creative people by training and experience. I asked these audience members to do the same exercise. Brown had prescribed, draw a logo and invent a slogan for a series of taxidermy shops. I did not, however, give them any of the cues that Brown had known were along the ad. Men's drive to his office. Without the cues the ad men were exposed to on their trip in London, how many in my audience do you think drew a logo with a bear, much less a bear sitting on a cloud playing a harp? You're right if you said none. Of the 9,000 people asked to come up with a slogan, how many of them used the phrase animal heaven or creature heaven? You're right if you said 0. There's been an active debate through the years as to whether subliminal advertising works. Most experts agree that it does not work. Hidden messages don't seem to have much of a mysterious influence on us. But at the same time, research has shown consistently that cues have a surprising effect on us. Environmental triggers, those things we encounter and perceive as we go through our lives, whether they are consciously or unconsciously perceived, do influence our attitudes, thoughts, emotions, and behaviors far more so than most might think. Have you ever asked yourself, why don't I want to do what I know I should do? Have you ever thought, why don't I seem to be as happy as I should be, given what is going on in my life? Have you ever questioned, why am I more cranky or tired, or less patient than I should be, given the facts of my life? The truth is, your day is a series of cues that trigger how you feel, act, and think much more than you may realize. From the moment you awaken, the supercomputer between your ears begins to take in a wide variety of information through all of your senses. These cues trigger a sequence of thoughts, feelings, and actions that build upon one another. Each thought, feeling, or act becomes another cue. The momentum associated with these cues builds not only in the moment, but throughout the day. Each passing hour adds more cues, forming the conclusions about your day. It is a good day or a bad day. You are feeling positive or negative. You have been productive or unproductive. You are energized or you are drained, and so forth. That prevailing opinion of your day likely carries on into your sleep and determines an upon awakening set of cues that begin your next day. Over time, the cues you routinely take into your mind can create a prevailing attitudinal worldview, one in which you can eventually feel trapped without even knowing that you have been taken captive. Cues can eventually produce a general attitude, pessimism, optimism, fatalism, or any of a number of other isms. Perhaps the most insidious of all facts related to this is what you imagine, or the series of thoughts that play out in your mind are cues that trigger you. You will begin to look for, validate, and reinforce the cues that you think about, even if you have not encountered those cues in real life. Let me give you an example. Close your eyes and imagine that you are walking down a sidewalk past a small bakery. The aroma of cinnamon and yeast bread is filling the air. You can almost feel yourself salivate at the idea. Does this smell trigger you to quicken your pace to outwalk the temptation? Do you veer into the bakery and lay claim to one of the biggest and most sumptuous cinnamon rolls you have ever seen? In the aftermath, do you feel proud of yourself for resisting, guilty for succumbing, What do those thoughts trigger? Will it trigger a change in your lunch plans? Will it impact your communication with people you now perceive as cinnamon roll-worthy colleagues, or those you believe should abstain from having as many cinnamon rolls as they seem to be eating? These cues and triggers build upon one another and become basic patterns of thinking and feeling. To change your day, begin by considering the cues that you encounter on a daily basis. If the cues you are experiencing are not serving you, well, if you don't like the way you are thinking, feeling, or acting, make an intentional decision to refocus your attention, to redirect your imagination and patterns of thinking, and to begin to absorb cues that you believe can create greater motivation, energy, productivity, optimism, creativity, and more rewarding relationships with others. People who thrive in a high-demand world take a more intentional approach to what they perceive, choose to really look at their world, and be aware of what is being absorbed into their conscious and subconscious minds. Build their daily life so that it consistently cues greater and greater positive energy. Chapter 2. Behavioral Momentum. The CEO of a Fortune 100 company stood on the stage, behind a lectern and in front of a large digital display panel. On the display were the words, "Thank you," along with the logo of their Platinum Award. The event was part of an incentive trip for the top salespeople in the corporation, and it was being held on the island of St. Martin in the Caribbean. Only the top 1% of salespeople had been invited. The audience of several hundred people was attending this very special corporate meeting. They looked very festive in their Hawaiian print shirts, swimsuit cover-ups, and flip-flops. The CEO said, "As you know, this trip is not about work, but reward. Today we officially announce the top 10 sales representatives of our entire company." As the CEO then announced the representatives, one by one, he began with number 10 and counted his way down, generally, adding a comment that went something like this: "Ben Smith, of the Southeast region, who has the account with company ABC, which grew X% over last year to a total of X thousands of dollars." This general statement accompanied the introduction of the representatives numbers 10 to 5. When the CEO reached the rep in position number 4, he said, "Barry Ozturk, from the South Central region, whose account with ABC," and then he flipped over the page in front of him to keep reading. "Def. GHI, JKL companies." He paused, and with amazement in his voice, he continued, "Wow, Barry produced X% increase this year and did so without a primary account. Most representatives who reached the Platinum Award level in this company have only one big account. Barry had reached the number 4 spot by hustling among several small and medium-sized accounts, which is significantly harder and very rare. I had made a presentation to this conference right before this awards event and was listening to the CEO from backstage. After I heard the presentation, I tracked down Barry and arranged to have breakfast with him the next morning. My main question to Barry was, "How did you do it?" He said, "Andy, by 9 o'clock every morning, most of my peers are sitting at their desks finishing their read of the morning paper. By 9 o'clock, I've already met with 2 to 3 new prospects. I've exercised, eaten a healthy breakfast, and had coffee with my wife. He continued, I'm not trying to say that my coworkers are lazy. They are not. I know many are working past 8 o'clock on most work nights. I just don't think that is the most productive way to live, and it is certainly not the way I choose to live. I could see how such a fixed routine might work for a person who goes into a main office every day, but that was not the case with Barry. He told me, my days are always different. Some are in the office. Sometimes I am traveling or meeting with people. Other days are spent doing paperwork. But I have very consistent patterns. Barry's pattern goes like this. He wakes up early, walks to the opposite side of the room to the table where his alarm clock sits. He flips the alarm off, no snoozing. He walks into his closet and puts on exercise clothes that he has laid out the night before. He goes immediately to the gym, the treadmill, in his home, or jogs outside for 30 minutes. He cools off after his exercise, has a mug of coffee from his programmable coffee maker, and sits down to eat a breakfast that he also laid out the night before. He eats while reading the newspaper or a business journal. He showers, spends a few minutes with his wife and children, and then heads out the door. His first 2 meetings or activities were scheduled the day before. After those meetings, he usually swings by the home office about mid-morning and checks messages or attends meetings that set in motion appointments for the remainder of his day. Months and now years, those patterns have had measurable results in his life. His patterns have produced progress that he can feel and see, and much of that progress happens even before his peers have finished reading the morning paper. I can hear some of you thinking, yeah, Andy, Barry is a go-getter. That's only one point to be gleaned from his life. The greater point is this: Barry's first things first approach to a day sets in motion a pattern that continues throughout his day. The positive momentum he creates early in his day cues a productive rest of the day. The truth is this: what you do first matters. Core concept: what you do first matters. So Isaac Newton once said, objects in motion tend to stay in motion. From my perspective, and after countless conversations with go-getters, I firmly believe that the ideas, actions, thoughts, and feelings that a person sets in motion first thing in the morning tend to not only stay in motion, they have a great likelihood of gaining in momentum throughout a day, especially if those ideas, actions, thoughts, and feelings occur in a rapid sequence. There is a better way to start the day. By the time Barry got to his office, he had already ticked off several important boxes on his list of things to do, and he was geared toward continuing that pace for the next several hours while his peers were still in the starting blocks looking for their first box to check off. What behavioral momentum accomplishes. Behavioral momentum is a well-documented theory in the realm of motivation, and it is a key means of increasing compliance or stick-to-itiveness in goal setting. The theory proposes that if you want someone to do a fairly difficult activity, which that person may not initially want to do, then ask the person to do 1 or 2 fairly easy activities before you ask him to do the more difficult activity. The person's success, perhaps even enjoyment at the task, or the enjoyment at having accomplished the task, sets up the person to want to continue the success and to give greater positive effort to accomplishing the difficult task. Core concept: Motivation is really momentum in disguise. In Barry's case, day after day of successful productivity had a similar momentum effect. Days of high productivity set Barry up for weeks of high productivity until this pattern became a predictable habit that consistently motivated him to his best behavior. With the most positive attitude and most creative ideas, the clients with whom he met, of course, were encountering an upbeat, creative, energized rep, and his overall positive performance in their presence encouraged them to buy, and then buy some more. Behavioral momentum produces a formula of 1 plus 1 plus 1 is equal to 10. Momentum is a multiplication process. It produces a geometric curve. I have met dozens of people who tell me that when they began to see real progress toward a new goal they had set for themselves, they began to feel the impact of momentum. They began to think, "This makes me feel great. I can do this. Why wasn't I doing it before?" The initial success is both reinforcing and motivating. But what happens if a person gives up or falls out of the new routine? The reverse kicks in. It doesn't take long before a person loses consistency, motivation wanes, and goals fade. Before long, the person is thinking, "How was I ever able to do that?" Things can be turned around. Have you ever left a sporting event before the end of the game or competition because one team was getting hammered so badly that the game had become boring? And then, on the drive home, as you turned on the radio to get the final score of what you just knew was a wipeout, you hear that the losing team is staging an amazing comeback, and one that eventually produces a squeak-by victory in the last seconds. How could momentum change so quickly? Have you ever arrived at work feeling energized, positive, focused, and highly motivated, and then reflected later in the day on how rewarding those first few tasks or appointments of your day turned out to be? But then, the next day, you came to work after a rough, perhaps sleepless night, bad traffic problems, angry words with your significant other, and you glare at those in your office, thinking, "All these happy people are getting on my nerves. What makes the difference?" Have you ever wondered how just one negative performance can change your attitude so quickly, and conversely, how one major score can create many more positive vibes, and even a few more social invitations than you ever thought possible? Why are people so fickle? Have you ever wondered how you can feel incredibly cranky toward your child or significant other in one moment, and at the same time feel deep love for that person? The answer to all of the questions above is this. DONOBE. Core concept, DONOBE. Break it down. Do no be. What you do usually starts a cycle that triggers a deeper understanding of what you know, information, ideas, attitudes, feelings, which results in a state of being. This is counter to what many people believe. They think that a person has a character that is intact and out of this, a person learns facts or produces ideas and feelings, and this knowledge base motivates the person's behavior. This belief that if you know something is important and worthwhile, then you should want to do it, is one of the primary drivers of the ultimately frustrating question, why don't I do what I know I should? Study after study in behavior change show that the opposite is true. Get somebody to do something, and out of their doing, they will develop attitudes, ideas, and feelings. If what they do is successful and positive, they will learn that this doing is good. It is beneficial, rewarding, and pleasurable. They will want to do it again and again. If the behavior is healthful, positive, and rewarding, the information they gain will compel them to create a new habit of doing, and over time, it is our habits of behavior combined with our habits of thinking or feeling that produce our character. Larry Wingett, the pit bull of personal development, says, "Nothing in life gets better until you do." I agree, and think of it like this: nothing in your life gets better until your daily patterns do. But when your daily patterns get better, everything gets better. There are a number of organizations and even entire industries that have bought into a no-DOBE pattern. They believe that if they can just get enough of the right information, benefits, or commands to their people, they will see behavioral changes. The messages issued are often relentless and even obnoxious. The messages are generally geared to telling others all of the nasty things that will happen if the rules are broken. The process fails, the goals are not met, and conversely, messages are given that tell all of the wonderful things that may happen if the messages are heeded. We need to get real about this. The truth is that the vast majority of people know that continual absenteeism is going to result in workplace discipline and perhaps the loss of a job. The vast majority of people in our culture know that smoking is bad for you, that you should buckle your seatbelt, that drugs are bad for a teenager, and that obesity can have all sorts of health consequences. None of them good. Awareness campaigns are only effective if the people being given the messages are unaware. Let me be very practical in giving an example. Let's say that your company wants its employees, including you, to have your blood drawn and tested once a year to ensure you stay healthy. Telling you that you should get your blood tested is helpful, but not the most effective thing to do. It is far more effective if a mobile blood testing van is invited to pull into the parking lot outside your office. And what is even more effective is a supervisor who asks you, "When do you want to take off to go get your blood tested? Let's schedule it right now on my calendar so I know when you will be away, just like we schedule vacation time." Such a supervisor is not approaching you from a no perspective, but from a behavioral DO perspective. Making the appointment and going to the appointment are behavioral acts, not mental exercises. Overall, changing what you think, also known as adjusting your attitude or expanding your information base, does not always result in action. Action, however, does always change the way you think. Kelly McGonigal, a psychologist and Stanford professor, and author of a book titled The Willpower Instinct, stated that it is generally futile to try to fix our thinking by clearing up anxiety or fears before we take an active step toward doing something. Rather, we are better off to launch out and take action in spite of and often in the face of our fears or past failures. When we lead with DO, our experience actually modifies our perspective and very often changes our level of anxiety or fear. In the doing, we gain valuable information that is motivating. We'll learn more about ourselves, more about how to reach our goals, and more about how to act in ways that are increasingly beneficial and positive. Motivation is more of an experimental lesson than an informational one. I'm all for being a DONOBE. One of my favorite sales trainers is Terry Stratton, and one of my favorite quotes she has made is this: be a closer, not a concluder. If you want someone to do something, don't end your message to that person with a statement. In conclusion, I want you to think long and hard about this. Rather, end your appointment with, here's my pen. Are you ready to sign on? Instead of, you should get your blood tested. A more effective approach is, our wellness team has set up a blood testing station in this room and at these times. What time can you go? No matter the territory. I believe it is also important to tell you that Barry's territory was one of the worst that the company had. Barry didn't succeed because he was working highly fertile, rich sales fields. He was succeeding in spite of poor soil. His success was not only because of his ability to build behavioral momentum. Barry is a thriver. To change your day, remember, nothing in your life gets better until your daily patterns do. But when your daily patterns get better, everything gets better. Be a DONOBE. Lasting motivation is an experimental lesson. Take time to reflect on the way your daily behaviors produce attitudes, feelings, and ideas. Consider how you can proactively design your daily life so that you are fueling the person you want to be. Chapter 3. Hope like a thriver. Everybody I know, including myself, can come up with dozens of excuses, some of them legitimate and some of them very creative, to explain why they don't do the things they want to do. There are many reasons for a failure in a job or relationship that lie beyond the effort or quantity and quality of time that a person gives to a task or goal. Rather than focus on why failure might occur, I encourage you to ask, what do the high-achieving, fulfilled, purposeful, and happy people do? In my experience, most working adults put in good effort. They don't have major character flaws or personality disorders. They don't lack values. Even so, they tell me with a fair degree of regularity that they feel too tired to re-energize themselves, too distracted to feel connected to others, too busy to accomplish the things that are most meaningful to them, too worried about the future to be fully present in the moment. What are these people to do? And why is change so difficult? The renewing power of hope. After researching working adults for over 2 decades, from the United States to Asia and Europe, I have discovered that nearly all people in high-demand jobs or stages of life fit into one of 3 general categories: thrivers, strivers, and strugglers. Strugglers are those who are not fit for high-demand workplaces. They either don't want to or are not ready to work hard. They nearly always leave or are liberated by an organization to pursue what they perceive to be greener pastures, requiring less grazing effort. While it is possible to motivate or give new perspective to strugglers, they are not the focus of this book. They are a study unto themselves. Strivers are those who work hard, often meet their own expectations and those of their superiors at work, but often struggle with high levels of stress and of maintaining a high quality of work, life, and attitude. They want to succeed in all areas of their life, but may not have the skills or plan about how to succeed. Thrivers are those who work hard, consistently meet or exceed their expectations at work and who experience high levels of success with only low levels of stress both professionally and personally. Let me add here that I do not believe it is possible to live an entirely stress-free life, in part because a certain amount of stress is necessary for growth, high performance, and high achievement. Ask even the most experienced performer, athlete, or business mogul about whether he ever feels a little tension as he prepares to walk on stage, take on a competitor, or finalize a deal. He will nearly always will say, yes. Thrivers, however, have mastered the mental skills to release that pre-performance stress and to limit its impact apart from the precise time frame of their performance, competition, or high-impact meeting. There are a number of other very specific characteristics and behaviors associated with each of these three categories. But in this chapter, I want to address only one characteristic associated with thrivers. First, let's consider Barry, whom we met in the previous chapter. He was a thriver. He wasn't just working, he was achieving. He rarely asked the question, why don't I do what I know I should? He wasn't just dreaming of rewards, he was earning them, receiving them, and enjoying them. He was not only successful in one area of his life, his entire life had the earmarks of success. Barry's attitude and way of life helped him eliminate any motivational amnesia. That is my term for the phenomenon in which a person's motivation can be high one day and dissipate the next, only to reappear for sometimes no apparent reason. Values, genetics, and personal history don't change, but a person nevertheless seems to lose motivation, even forget who they are, what they are capable of doing, or why they want to be at their peak in both performance and character. Day in and day out, Barry was able to sustain a fairly even and highly enviable flow of behavioral momentum without bouts of motivational amnesia. This was one of the traits that made him a bona fide thriver. At the core of thriving is hope. It sounds simple, and it is, but hope is often a very difficult thing to conjure up and sustain. Barry had developed a way of life that built his confidence that he would be successful at work and in his personal life, and this provides a fertile ground for hope to grow. Some time ago, I sat in a large auditorium listening to a presentation from one of the leading behavior change experts of our time. He was making me lose hope. He cited highly negative trends. The United States is becoming more and more obese every year, and the result is that morbid obesity is at near-epidemic levels. Up to 75% of workers in the United States are not fully engaged in their work and do not feel motivated to improve their work output, workplace morale, or levels of efficiency. Job satisfaction is near an all-time low across many industries and professions. Divorce rates are still very high and rising. Credit card debt is at an all-time high, and on he went. He told of a statistic related to heart attacks that I found especially troubling. It seems that physicians routinely tell those who have survived serious heart attacks that they can significantly lower their chance of having another heart attack if they will begin to live in a healthier way, specifically to exercise, eat more fiber, lose weight if they are overweight, give up smoking, and take the medications prescribed for their heart health with regularity. One major study found that 6 out of 7 patients who heard this advice from their cardiologist did not start or did not sustain the healthier life prescribed for them. A high percentage didn't even fill the prescriptions given to them, much less take those medications with regularity. The presenter then stated, "Physicians know that a person has a much better chance of being cured of cancer than of permanently losing weight." My heart sank. I thought, if people won't change, even when their life is on the line, what chance do we have of getting them to improve things that are not directly life-threatening? A friend told me about a young child who had heard some bad news and responded with a clever phrase to the bad news. "Bearer, you are cranking me down." This guy was seriously cranking me down. And then a thought and a bit of anger kicked in. Hey, wait a minute. I know a great many people who are changing, and who have changed, even when change seemed nearly impossible. I've personally helped many people to change to become more productive, less stressed, and healthier. And furthermore, I've seen these people sustain positive changes. I walked out of that presentation with a firm conclusion. Yes, it may be disheartening, even depressing, that 6 of 7 people don't change or fail in their attempts to change even when their life is in balance. But that means there is 1 of every 7 who does change even in the aftermath of a serious heart attack. There is 1 in every 7 who manages to change and sustain change. Seek out the 1 in 7. Human nature seems to drive us to focus on the 6 out of 7 people who fail to change or sustain change. Thrivers are those who overcome this tendency and choose to focus on the 1 in 7 who do change. They tend to focus more on the 1 in 7 in their personal actions, focusing on the 1 in 7 who do change, who do grow, who do overcome their motivational amnesia, who do begin again and build momentum are people who have greater hope. Focus on the positive 1 in 7 in your own life. And hope is like the additive that gives higher octane to a person's performance. Hope is what helps a person do even in the face of difficulty. And remember, it is what a person does that is the primary kickstarter to having more of everything good in life, including powerful, sustained motivation. It seems to be human nature to love the underdog in just about any arena of competition. In the area of motivation, I call the 1 in 7 the change underdogs. I encourage you to seek out those who are succeeding in spite of everything life has thrown at them. It is only when you seek out the 1 in 7 that you will find them. The 6 out of 7 are a lot more visible and a lot more entrenched in their resistance to all things that are positive and encouraging. Look specifically for people who are doing what you want to achieve. Use them as your role models. The 9 most motivating words you can say are, "If they could do it, I can do it." A 2005 study published in the American Journal of Ophthalmology was done with people who suffer from glaucoma. They each were given a prescription for eye drops to help their condition. The downside was that they had to use these eye drops up to 10 times a day. The upside was a high probability that they could retain their eyesight. Within 6 months, half of the people had stopped taking their eye drops, and the result was that their glaucoma worsened. In 3 years, barely a third were even fulfilling the prescription for the eye drops. They had lost hope in their ability to change. They no longer had hope of retaining their eyesight over the next few years. They had allowed discouragement to overcome hope. It happens more than we like to admit. And sometimes it doesn't take much to push a person into doubt, anxiety, and worry, discouragement, and depression. We each must become the foremost person to proclaim to ourselves, I will stay focused on hope. Those who focus on the 6 people out of 7 not only suffer from failure, but they suffer in their emotions and attitudes, and often fall into despair. Those who see the 1 person in 7 are thrivers. They are hopeful. They refuse to give up on hope. They refuse to cave into periodic loss or downturns. They keep focused on what can still be good, and they surround themselves as much as possible with people who are also believing in and pursuing the future with hope. To change your day, remember, hope triggers motivation and resilience. Do you see yourself as being hopeful? Do you have hope that you can grow your ability to thrive? Nobody can turn you into a thriver but you. Thrivers see the 6 people out of 7, but focus on the 1 out of 7. Identify at least 3 people whom you consider to be your heroes when it comes to pursuing and sustaining change. What about their life inspires you? Do you truly believe that you can become like that person? Chapter 4. Stay in the day. Andy, I have no balance in my life. I was in Las Vegas and had just finished presenting a program on stress and work-life balance when Janet came to me with this statement. She had stayed after the presentation and had stood near the auditorium exit while 5 or 6 other people had lined up to ask me questions. As I gathered my presentation notes and prepared to leave the auditorium, she came to stand directly in front of me. I looked up from gathering my things and said with surprise, "Oh, hi. Can I help you?" She responded, "Andy, I have no balance in my life. I've got to do something." She then described the situation that had brought her to this realization. Janet had been walking around a beautiful Cancun resort, scouting it out for her company's next executive retreat. She should have been enjoying her time there. Instead, she had sweated off all her makeup, was feeling embarrassed, and was silently praying that the site tour would end soon. She had stopped the group that was being escorted around the resort 5 times so that she might catch her breath. It might have been the heat and humidity. It might have been the 47 pounds she had gained over the past 4 years. It might have been the stress she felt about her new responsibilities at work. Likely it was the D answer, all of the above. Janet's increase in work responsibilities had resulted in her sleeping with her phone near her head so she could check for messages in the middle of the night. She barely recovered from 1 round of deadlines before the next project consumed her. She found that any mention of stress fell on deaf ears. Her friends, co-workers, and even her significant other thought of her job as being all first-class travel and champagne dreams. It was true that Janet had wanted and had worked hard to attain her current position, but she had also come to realize that she had greatly underestimated how much the extra work and responsibilities would impact her. Her hair was thinning. She had been prescribed medication for high blood pressure, and her physician routinely told her that she needed to change her lifestyle. Janet's family had initially been supportive of her longer hours at work and out-of-town business trips. But recently, they had begun to complain about missing her and also missing her formerly cheerful attitude. She rarely had the time to visit with friends, which is something she craved. Exercise? Not a chance, no time. Date night? That would be nice. Volunteer for good causes? I'd like to. As I took a breath to respond to her, she stopped me. Andy, I will try whatever you suggest, if you can tell me when. I will reach my goal of a more balanced life. I am a researcher by background and educational training, so I responded in my research mode. There are just too many variables to tell exactly when. In truth, this can be affected by variables in genetics, family history, personal life, experiences. She responded, no, 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 Andy. If I am going to try to change my life, I need to know when it will happen. I immediately recognized that Janet had fallen victim to a common mindset. She was clearly thinking that she had to change her life, her whole life, all simultaneously. I tried to explain, as briefly as I could, that she needed to stop worrying about when she would see the big result she wanted. Rather, she needed to have faith that results could come and would come. But she wouldn't have any of that. Andy, I want to know when, and I'm not going to do anything you tell me to do unless you can tell me how long it is going to take for my life to make some serious improvements. I thought a moment, and then finally said, okay, Janet, if you do what I am going to suggest to you, you will achieve your goal of balance by June 31st of this year. Her face brightened with excitement and then immediately darkened. Andy, there are only 30 days in June, she said. I wasn't trying to trick Janet or convey a message that I didn't think she would ever reach any of her goals in a timely manner. To the contrary, I was trying to get her to make a quick, abrupt, and vital change in her perspective. I said, Janet, you don't have to change your whole life. That is too big a goal. It's too hard to sustain multiple changes all at once. Trying that will suck the fun and motivation out of you. I want to help you change your day, not your whole life. I readily admit that she stared at me blankly, but I could also tell that her mental wheels were turning. She agreed to meet with me to discuss the concept of changing her day. Core concept, change your day. When I met next with Janet, I asked her to tell me about her typical workday. Here is what she described. Janet awoke to an alarm each morning, usually from a deep sleep. She instinctively hit the snooze button. Ring, snooze, ring, snooze, ring, groan, and finally she'd get up. Her first thought of the day was usually that she was running behind. She began rushing to get ready to leave her home, with no breakfast except perhaps something dispensed from a vending machine at her workplace on her way upstairs to her office. She usually careened into her office with caffeine in hand, and she became a productivity machine as the caffeine kicked in. About an hour later, she usually had a sinking feeling of exhaustion, so she'd get up and set out for what she called a little cubicle trick-or-treating, and if that failed, she ended up in the break room to see if anyone had brought in donuts. On the way back to her desk, she grabbed more Java, which pushed the needle a little past reasonable caffeine intake. Her coffee, of course, was heavily laced with sugar and cream. Shortly after she got back into full productivity mode, it was time for lunch. For her, the choice between the guiltless chicken breast and the loaded cheeseburger was, well, it was no choice at all. After lunch, although she tried to be highly productive, she often felt overdrawn in the energy department and with a correspondingly high level of stress. By mid-afternoon, she usually felt little desire to work even though she felt anxious about how much work she had. Rather than make an important phone call, for example, she would open up a web browser to do a little internet research, which was often not related to a work project. Janet felt the added pressure that this deferral of key work meant that she was going to have to take more work home. That pattern had come to feel like the norm. On the way home, she usually had moments of reflecting about how grateful she was to have her family. Even so, she admitted that she often began barking at them the minute she opened the door, and then almost immediately regretted her behavior. By the time she sat down to dinner, the stress of the day fueled her into eating just about everything in sight, as if it was her last supper, which also created more internal struggles later, both physically and emotionally. Finally, exhausted after knocking out most of the work she had brought home, she would collapse on her bed. As soon as her eyes were closed, however, her mind would wind up and begin to worry about the next day's to-do list. She often felt that she had just settled into deep, deep sleep when the alarm sounded and the routine began all over again. A continual cycle of sabotage. Before we go further, let me assure you that Janet's story is not a made-up story. She is a real person to whom I gave practical ideas. I worked with her for several months as she began to re-engineer her day, a little bit at a time, so that she consistently built herself up to a routine that energized her and that helped her achieve and sustain greater productivity, creativity, and good relationships with her coworkers and loved ones. We work from a very basic premise. Don't try to change your whole life. Short-term goals and simple daily habits build upon one another. Remember, motivation is momentum in disguise. Core concept: don't try to change your whole life. Short-term goals and simple daily habits build upon one another. Initially, I felt that my major goal with Janet was to help her see that her daily patterns were consistently sabotaging her motivation and best-laid plans and goals. She had become stuck in a vicious cycle that de-energized her and made everything seem more difficult, both to achieve and to sustain. It wasn't a matter of willpower or lack of willpower. She needed a better game plan, a better standard operating procedure. She needed to adopt a new pattern of simple daily behaviors that could help her build momentum. It was going to be these habitual, daily behaviors that would be the key to taking her from where she was to where she wanted to be. Most of all, I encouraged her, you must stay in the day. The choices need to be made daily. The behaviors need to be practiced daily. The rewards need to be felt in a day. And if her day imploded, she could get back on track in a day. That's the fastest way to build the momentum and to move a person consistently forward and upward to their highest aspirations. Let me fast forward. 2 years after my first encounter with Janet, I returned to Las Vegas to give a presentation to her corporation. After the presentation, 4 people lined up to talk with me. After I had spoken to the first 2 people, I turned to the third person and said, "May I answer a question for you?" There was a rather uncomfortable pause, and then the woman before me asked, "What is today's date?" I thought that question was a bit odd, but I replied, "March 22nd. She replied, "No, Andy, it is June 31st. I hadn't recognized Janet. During the 2 years since I had met with her, she had implemented the game plan I outlined for her and had lost nearly 75 pounds, putting her back into clothes she had not worn since college. She laughed because, to her amazement, those clothes at the back of her closet were back in style. Her co-workers were amazed at the change in her life, not only her physical appearance, but the changes in her attitude, demeanor, and management skills. Janet no longer gave people an all-access pass to her time. Her new day had set work-life boundaries, time for uninterrupted work and time for herself, and these changes not only stuck but were met with far less resistance than she had initially anticipated. Her productivity, health, and optimism had never been at higher levels. Others around her also seemed to be on a path toward greater productivity, better health, and higher morale. Her team, in a down economy, had become the #1 division when it came to reaching business goals. Janet was no longer striving for a better life. She was thriving on a day-by-day basis. Janet finished our conversation that evening by telling me about another moment of truth. Again, she had been in Cancun. This time, however, she had not struggled physically. She had actually climbed Chichen Itza to see the Mayan temple there. She said, "I didn't need to stop once on that steep hike." She went on, "Andy, I live each day now with more hope, more energy, more motivation, and greater confidence that I'm doing what I want to do. I'm reaching my daily personal goals. I cannot tell you how much of a difference it made when you switched my focus from feeling a need to change my life to changing my day. I stay in the day now, and staying in the day and changing my day has changed my life. The change may be almost imperceptible, but the truth is, the change is occurring in the person who seeks to change daily patterns of behavior. The changes in physical behavior, attitude, thinking, motivational level, feelings, and relationships build upon one another. They produce subtle benefits and tiny bits of growth, which begin to accumulate in truly amazing ways. Perhaps most important of all, a decision to stay in the day takes pressure off most people when it comes to the massive amount of changes they think they need to make in order to be more of whatever they desire to be more of. More successful, more healthy, more personable, more loving, more educated, more accomplished, more fit, whatever it is that becomes the desired more goal. That goal begins to be achieved but without pressure and without undue striving if a person scales the goal back to the day. Janet made herself one of the 1 in 7 who is conscientious, works hard, and truly brings about change in her life. She gives me hope. She is a thriver. She is a hard-working, responsible adult with a strong desire to succeed and accepts responsibility for her own life. She is willing to sacrifice some things for the success she desires, but she is not sacrificing what is truly valuable to her. As a thriver, she has found a way of life that enfolds both her time at work and her time away from work. The paradox of gaining more with less effort. When I meet people like Janet and when I see the tremendous results in their lives that are the product of shifting their focus to daily behaviors and habits, I have a much brighter view of the world. I gain hope. I see thriving played out fully, and have a renewed sense that far more people are capable of thriving than are presently doing so. An older, wiser friend once said to me, "Life doesn't need to be as hard as many people make it." I believe that is true on a number of levels. Problems abound. I'm not in denial about that. Challenges in our world are big. But nearly all problems, challenges, and needs are best faced if they are brought down the scale of what can be done right now by taking on one small piece of a difficult situation. Doing everything all at once simply isn't possible, and it isn't healthful. Doing something positive in a daily context is possible, and it is not only healthful, but highly beneficial over time, bit by bit, step by step, day by day, and then one piece at a time fits together into your day, so you can tap into the vast amounts of energy and ability inside you. Who, me? You may be thinking. Yes, almost every psychological theory about human nature says in one form or another that you have a vast amount of energy and ability, and you are capable of doing far more than you presently are doing while, at the same time, absorbing less stress. Read on. To change your day. Remember, thrivers don't try to change their whole life. They know the value of determining and defining what is doable in a day. They put a lot of value on generational growth. Discrete, small, doable behaviors add up to make a day satisfying or unsatisfying. The defining of those behaviors is up to you, and so are definitions for satisfying and unsatisfying. Remember, to stay in the day, what are you capable of adjusting in your daily habits? What might you change in the first hour of your day? What might you change in the first half hour after you get home? What might you change in the last 15 minutes before you fall asleep? Chapter 5. The Big Picture of Balance. Balance is not a goal only for Janet. It is a word heard often in today's workplace, especially in motivational circles. Some people call it work-life balance or work-life integration. Scott Heiferman, CEO at Meetup, said, "I'm not into the phrase work-life balance exactly, but however you want to phrase it, it is a really important thing. I couldn't say it better myself. Work-life balance is usually expressed as an example of synergy, a key factor in effectiveness, with an end goal of happiness and fulfillment." At a recent conference at which I was scheduled to speak, the event organizer removed the word balance from my biography as she prepared the brochure. She told me that people react negatively to the word. When I probed as to why the word balance, which I see as a big positive, could be regarded as a negative, she replied, "Many people feel guilty for not already having balance in their lives, and the rest don't think it is possible. A few don't think the concept even exists." I'm often challenged on Twitter with comments on how balance is impossible. For example, one tweet I received read, Forbes don't see the reason, weight of silver, and lead have different weight, therefore you need different amounts to balance. Like Scott Heiferman's quote, I too believe that balance is a really important thing, but the problem isn't how people define it. My response to the challenging tweet was 50/50th balance, if possible, would underdeliver. I love your silver lead metaphor. Balance is synergy. 1 + 1 is equal to 3. I suggest that those people start seeing the 1 in 7, because in my experience, most people do believe balance, in one definition or another, exists, even though they admit they don't have it, and they're not at all sure how to achieve it or if it's possible to achieve it and be successful in today's working world. I get it. From a purely objective perspective, a state of balance implies equilibrium, and in most areas of life, equilibrium sucks the passion out of life and creates a status quo that is less energetic, less dynamic, and more likely to produce resistance than motivation. Even so, I often say, my work is consuming me and my family is suffering. I'm succeeding at my job and failing in my health and non-work relationships. I'm not sure all the time and energy that I'm pouring into my career is going to be worth it in 40 years. But what should you do if you are passionate about becoming more successful and or often challenged to accomplish more, faster, better, and in less time than before? How do you balance a high-demand job with the needs for fulfilling personal relationships, maintaining your health, and having a high quality of life? First, let me suggest a change in terms. Let's take the approach of Tony C., CEO of Zappos and author of Delivering Happiness, who has written, rather than focus on work-life separation or work-life balance, I think it's more important to focus on work-life integration. People should be doing what they are passionate about doing and having fun doing it. At the end of the day, it shouldn't be about work vs. life. It should just be about life. I agree fully. Integration means that work and life are complementary. They work together in concert to fuel who you are and who you want to become. Second, let me state that I believe that when work is integrated fully into a high-quality life, a 1 + 1 is equal to 3 formula kicks in. The key is to seek an enhancement of all of life that moves a person's existence into a stratum of excellence. In this stratum, mind, emotions, and body are energized so that whatever is done, whether a task, a conversation, a performance, a practice session, the reading of a bedtime story, a one-on-one pickup game of basketball, a time of learning, or prayer, the doing is a high-quality performance. Segments of doing that are high quality tend to build on one another. All of life takes on an atmosphere of excellence, the stratum of excellence. One of my favorite quotes is a statement made by former U.S. President John F. Kennedy. When he was asked to define happiness, he said, "The full use of your powers along lines of excellence." Excellence is doing what you are gifted to do, what you have talents to do, innate propensities to do, and skills to do. Using your gifts to the best of your ability and ultimately at a high level of ability is a mark of excellence. And in that, there is tremendous joy, fulfillment, and a deep sense of satisfaction. If you want to be happy, Do your best at all times. You may not be the best in the world at what you are doing, but you are in the process of becoming the best you can be, and increasingly better at what you do. The key to developing a total life of excellence is rooted in the pervasive nature of one's values, goals, dreams, and beliefs. Our life integration is not primarily about achieving a ratio of work to personal time, as it is a composite expression of a purposeful, fulfilling life that exhibits the finest character qualities. We are back to DONOBE, when a person is doing his or her best at all hours of a day, expressing fully his or her values and beliefs in a consistent manner. A habit is forged that produces character. Life becomes integrated. What is held to be true, good, and virtuous in one setting is true, good, and virtuous in all settings. There is no switching from work mode or work values to home mode and home values. What does it take to live an integrated life? A well-defined and focused set of values and beliefs, a desire for excellence, an ability to choose tasks, responsibilities, memberships, and associations that are complementary, an ability to delegate and manage life as a whole. The first two factors above require a person to do some internal work. You must decide what it is that you truly believe and value. You must choose excellence. The last two factors are part of a personal strategic operating procedure. A fully integrated person makes choices about tasks, associations, responsibilities, and memberships on the basis of how well these obligations of time and energy fit together easily and productively. A fully integrated person becomes the CEO of his or her life. Many of the same skills required to be a successful executive or manager on the job from 9 to 5 are put into play to take on the management of life. You are the CEO of you. Most people seem to relegate the concept of management to a work environment or to work relationships. Management, however, by definition, is the process of organizing and controlling all available resources, time, materials, money, and personnel to successfully reach a goal or maintain a desired level of quality. Management includes plenty of communication and rewards. It includes such things as goal statements and vision statements. And in the realm of all of life, each of these aspects of management ultimately happens consciously or subconsciously. Think about a family. Think about a marriage. Think about a life devoted to service. Think about the way you integrate with your community. Every aspect of your life is ultimately subjected to a budget, the use of your resources. Every aspect of life includes other people, since no person truly can gain significance as a lone ranger. Every aspect of life includes allocations of time, energy, talents, and non-financial tangible resources. If this is true, and I believe it to be, then with work-life integration, each of your successes fully fuels the other areas of your life. Keith Ferrazzi, author of Who's Got Your Back and Never Eat Alone, said, "Everything you have achieved in life has been achieved by the help of others. Every dream you will achieve will happen with other people." I have this quote on my office wall. I look at it and try to live by it daily. But even so, you are the CEO of your life. You get to make the decisions. One of my friends is a professional therapist, And when I feel like giving him a hard time, I'll say, "And how do you feel about that?" to many of his comments. Kidding aside, he is a great therapist and a master of questions. He skillfully asks questions in a specific sequence. As you think about and answer them, you often abruptly come to the realization that where you are in life right now is a result of your decisions. That you are more in control of your decisions, thoughts, and future than you might believe. After this thought settles into your mind, it becomes an empowering and wonderfully motivating ideal. When you begin to think strategically about the whole of your life and take on the role of CEO of your life, you likely will find that some things don't fully fuel the other areas of life. If something does not, it is extraneous and should be phased out or jettisoned immediately in order to streamline your overall life operation. Other things may need to be folded into your schedule, your budget, and your set of responsibilities in order for you truly to max out what you perceive to be your purpose in life. The end goals are subject to your design, but I suspect you likely will place high value on quality health, a sense of fulfillment, and deep happiness or joy. In that framework, money becomes a tool to reach goals, not the end game. The CEO of a total life is going to be a person who knows that play and rest are vital to performance of personal relaxation and recreation, as well as team-related retreats and experiences with others. I like what George Santayana once said, "To the art of working well, a civilized race would add the art of playing well." In this scenario of total life management, balance is a byproduct. It is essential, but it is not the first consideration. The first considerations are always values and beliefs, an integration of character across all tasks, and a goal of excellence in all performances. Doing less and doing it well can elevate excellence. Doing less and involving others can elevate morale and reduce stress. Doing all things with a sense of get to instead of have to can produce greater motivation. As the CEO of your life, you get to define what works for you and what doesn't. And with that perspective, your hours at a job or in a workplace become aspects of a whole life subject to your control. In no way do I downplay the need to work hard to become successful. Neither do I dismiss the need to put in the hours that success demands. Hard work is a must in every area of life. But let's define hard. Hard work is consistent effort, marked by creativity, wise choices and decisions, and focused energy. All of these creative output, decision-making, and the allocation of energy on management decisions. They are also aspects of a successful marriage, family life, and enriching friendships. Marriage, parenting, and friendships also require creativity, wise choices and decisions, and focused energy. The good CEO of his or her life considers all factors and allocates accordingly across all dimensions of life. A strategic operating plan is the vehicle for engineering success, and along the way, integrating all factors of life. What won't you sacrifice? A major factor to consider in work-life integration is found in the answer you give to this question. What are you unwilling to sacrifice? We all know the stories of those who worked hard and achieved the top rung of their respective ladder only to find that they had a trail of personal debris in their wake. Damaged relationships, poor health, and a void deep inside. That beg to know, is this all there is? The pursuit of goals may require sacrifice of bits and pieces. From time to time, there may be less time for the pursuit of hobbies, less alone time, less time for shopping for the latest gadget, and so forth. But no goal is worth the sacrifice of anything that a person deems to be eternally important or part of what makes life meaningful and fulfilling. Perhaps it might be worth the sacrifice for a week or two, but be careful to not let this sacrifice become your standard operating procedure. Core concept, pick 3. Amy Jo Martin, author of Renegades Write the Rules, once found herself sitting in a meeting that did not directly involve her areas of responsibility. She became a bit bored and mentally began running through her mental to-do list. She tried to look interested, but realized that she hadn't succeeded when her boss, who was seated next to her, handed her a note. On it were 3 words: work, family, self. After she read the note, her boss leaned over and whispered, "Pick 2." She could tell that Amy Jo didn't fully understand what she was saying, so she added, "To really be successful, hey, you have to pick 2." At that very moment, although she knew she was considered one of the company's most talented up-and-comers, Amy Jo mentally quit her job. 2 months later, she made it an official resignation. Soon after, she began her own company, which soon became one of the most successful in her industry. She said, "I picked 3. I was not only more successful, but happier. I had more energy, more patience, and was more motivated than I had been in years." Can a person truly pick all 3? Yes. And please note that even if you do not have a family, perhaps you are not married, or are married and have no children, you still have a family. You likely have parents, siblings, or close relations. You may be invested emotionally in godchildren or nieces and nephews. And for many people, friends are definitely members of the family. Pick 3 applies to all people. To change your day, remember, thrivers see balance, however they define it, less as the reward of a successful life and more as the vehicle that makes lasting success possible. They believe that work plus life is 1 + 1 is equal to 3. Thrivers are the CEO of their life. They are in control of how they manage their life and do so based on their values, character, and a goal of excellence in all performances. Thrivers know what they are not willing to sacrifice. What is sacred to you? Chapter 6. Jettison the junk hours. The chairman of the board of one of the top trucking companies in the United States has one of the sharpest minds and the most business experience I have encountered. He hired me to help one of his leaders. He described him as a super hard worker, dedicated, with great potential. The CEO was worried about him, however, because he was showing signs of burnout and was not taking care of himself physically. He had recently let his weight get above the 280-pound mark. The CEO said, "I'm worried he will burn himself out before he reaches his potential." After we finished discussing how to help this employee, I said, "I know that you have an army of young, smart, and Dedicated workers under you, all of whom are aiming to climb the success ladder at your company. They each want to be on the top team. What do you think is the main difference between the ones who are going to make it and the ones who won't? I had expected him to respond with the answers I have heard often: hard work, dedication, passion, innovation. Instead, he said, I have met very few truly successful people in my career. They all seem to be clearly focused and adamant about having some form of balance in their life. I asked him to give me a description of a balanced career person. He replied, these are people who work exceptionally hard and often exceptionally long hours, but no matter how long or hard they work, they remain sharp, focused, and eager to face a new challenge or capture a new opportunity. I've decided that the difference between these employees and most of the others is that they have learned to work fewer junk hours. Identify and eliminate the junk. What is a junk hour? Well, it's a little like junk food. Junk food may taste good, but it provides no real nutrition to the body and actually can deplete energy rather than provide or sustain energy. Junk food often offers short-term pleasure and long-term exhaustion. Junk hours may or may not seem to be fun in the moment, but they produce no significant productivity and often push real work beyond the workday and into the night. Junk hours can be spent chasing rabbit trails on the internet with colleagues, at the water cooler with a few jokes and laughs, but they do not genuinely build friendships or enhance work skills. Junk hours can sometimes be spent in meetings that are not necessary, acquiring information that is not essential to doing high-quality work. Junk hours are going through the motions of work, but no, real work is being done, and in nearly all cases, the person knows it even if his or her boss doesn't. The person is putting in the time, but not gaining a real sense of satisfaction or fulfillment for what is being done. In health and productivity research, this is called presenteeism. Basically, you are physically at work, but your mind is absent. For a person to truly sustain motivation and build maximum success, the junk hours need to be eliminated. But what goes into their time slot? The answer lies in the very reason that many people seek out junk activities at work. In Janet's case, she was bored and likely was experiencing an energy low from too much sugar earlier in the day. For others, a little play on the internet helps lower the immediate stress related to a deadline. If a person can isolate why they are engaging in junk hours, they nearly always can look a little deeper to discover what will give them the break from routine that they desire, but in a way that builds work productivity and satisfaction rather than depletes it. Time exchanges. Ben was greatly admired in his company. In fact, his company's training department was using him as an example to teach others and to initiate new hires. Ben had an amazing work ethic. He was focused, a smart risk taker, and a bold thinker. Ben, unfortunately, experienced a real health scare. He said, there's nothing quite like feeling that a vice grip has clamped down on your heart and thinking that you are going to die, to get you to do a little reflective thinking. Ben was highly competitive, and he knew, as he reflected on his life and goals, that he liked being competitive. He enjoyed his work. He liked playing and winning the business game. At the same time, he loved his family and wanted to be alive to see his children finish college, marry, and give him grandkids to love. Ben was smart enough to know that he didn't know how to restructure his life. He went to his company's practice management expert, and he was fortunate that the practice management person in his corporation had also experienced a health scare and was focused on improving business strategies that also helped people improve their overall life strategies. He and Ben worked together to streamline some of Ben's work tasks and develop a daily strategy so that he had built-in time for recharging himself physically. In other words, Ben was shown ways he could carve out time to exercise and to continue to get all his work goals met in the process. Ben adopted a new routine. He got up each morning and spent some time journaling, while he ate a healthy breakfast. Twice a week he arranged to meet with friends. On Tuesdays he spent his lunch hour playing racquetball with an old friend rather than squeezing in more work between bites of a burger. Most Thursday nights, he and his wife spent time socializing with a small group of friends. Since Ben was able to structure his own work schedule, including time in the office and out of the office, he was able to set aside 1 hour on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays to go to a gym about 2 blocks from his office. He walked there, changed into workout clothes, spent a full 30 minutes on a treadmill or in the swimming pool, showered, dressed, and walked back to his office 60 minutes total. After writing appointments and meetings on his calendar, he added his appointments with Jim. Ben found that the exercise hours actually increased both his energy levels and sense of well-being to the point that he was able to work faster and smarter the rest of each workday. His overall average work weeks went from 65 to 70 hours to 40 to 45 hours, depending on the week. Did this adjustment in Ben's schedule impact his income? Only in a positive way. He actually began to post higher sales figures, more productivity per hour. In most cases, the elimination of junk hours causes an almost automatic increase in work productivity. In Ben's case, exercise hours gave him time to clear his mind, and he often found that on his walk back to his office, new ideas filled his mind and he had something of a second wind for turning those ideas into workable goals and plans. Junk hours don't simply waste time. They tend to distract a person or perhaps detour a person or dissipate his or her energy and focus. What is done in junk hours squanders innovation and creativity. A person may think he or she is just taking a break, but in truth, that break is truly a break in momentum. When a person chooses to take a break, he or she must make a key decision. What can I do that will produce something positive, something beneficial, something rewarding, something energizing? The replacement for a junk hour must be an hour that continues to build motivation and momentum. There must be a sense of accomplishment for something related to the person's overall life goals and values. It isn't all about money. Jim Komoshevsky was the first vice president and director of a strategic business unit at National Planning Corporation. He told me, in our business, it is easy to become a workaholic. Our people start their careers gung-ho. They have an entrepreneurial spirit. They like helping others build a a financially secure life, and, in the process, obtaining success for themselves. Some of them have significant egos. And a high percentage seem to think, I can put the rest of my life on hold, and then after I make a ton of money, I can use it to fix any aspects of my life that need fixing. But, Jim continued, in our coaching program, I have found that not one of my top producers asks me how to make more money. Rather, what they really want to talk with me about is how they can get more of their life back, how they can work fewer hours so they might have more time for non-work activities and yet still make the same income. We have lots of strategies for helping people work smarter. Some have been able to reduce their work hours by as much as 30% and, at the same time, increase their income. I recently heard about a man who had become a widower and had attempted to sustain the double-entry ledger system of his wife in keeping the books for his own finances, which were far less complicated than the finances his wife had managed when their business was at its peak. He went to an accountant and said, "How do I do this? How do I keep track of the information you need in order to prepare my taxes?" He came away from a 2-hour meeting greatly relieved. The task of bookkeeping was manageable and understandable. It was only going to take 3 hours a month. He could simplify the system and lose nothing important. That should be the goal for every person. The way you learned at the beginning of either of a particular job or the start of your career may not be the best strategy for you now. Find out the optimum way of doing what you need to do. Think about what you can do to become as efficient as you can be, taking as few steps as necessary, fast and error-free as you can be, taking up as little time as necessary, productive as you can be, juggling and completing as many tasks as you can in a particular day, streamlined as you can be, eliminating all wasted motion. Work with someone who knows the ropes of good time and task management. The byproduct of a new and more efficient way of working is likely going to be less boredom and less need to seek out the distractions of junk hour activities. Jim told me that those who build in health activities to replace junk hours often see as much as a 42% improvement in their business. The health activity might be anything from an exercise break in a formal gym to a walking meeting in place of a sit-down to a run around a park across the street. It might be a mental health break that still produces something that is valuable to the employee. I recently met a woman who takes a 20-minute knitting break every day, usually at 2 o'clock. She said, "I drink a big jug of ice water and pull my knitting out of the file drawer and let the needles fly. I always have a project in process, usually a gift and sometimes a baby blanket for a homeless shelter around the corner. This is a total break in my work routine. I am focused on the hand-eye coordination project before me. I have a sense of accomplishment at the end of the 20 minutes. That I am one step closer to the completion of something that has value and beauty and is of benefit to others. Doing handwork gives me a genuine mental break, and it is actually rather amazing, Andy. On many days, I find that as my fingers are engaged in something practical and rhythmic, my mind actually shifts gears and I come away with a new idea or a new insight into the work project I'm doing. I'm ready to get back to work and with a sense of fulfillment. Over time, 20 minutes of knitting ends up being almost 7 hours of knitting a month, and that very often is a completed item. Accomplishment. This woman is maintaining momentum in less time than most people take a coffee break, keeping her mind engaged and producing something in line with what is important to the whole of her life. This is the exact opposite of a junk hour. There are countless ways to exchange junk hours for hours that build greater health and value into a workday. Jim told me I've coached more than 120 advisors and discovered more than 120 ways to find a more productive balance between work and the whole of life. There are countless ways to work smarter and to work smarter for the whole of a person's life. To change your day, remember, thrivers work fewer junk hours, which gives them time to maintain or improve their physical and emotional health, which in turn fuels greater work performance. Be honest with yourself and own up to your junk hours. What might you replace them with? What activities will give you a break from your work routine and at the same time improve your physical health, improve your emotional or mental health, increase your creativity, help you sustain momentum and motivation? Seek to jettison the junk hours and at the same time add value and fun to your day. Chapter 7. Greater Self-Awareness. Jeff is a local sports legend. He is the past captain of a university dream team, the only one to win a national championship in the state's history for his sport. Even now, decades after he graduated, most local restaurants won't let him pay for a meal. They are proud he has chosen their place of business. Jeff was drafted to the pros and had a successful career. And then he went to medical school and eventually became a well-known surgeon in his home community. When Jeff approached me for personal coaching, I was not at all sure how or if I could help him. He seemed to have lived and to be living an exceptional life. Over coffee, Jeff said, "Andy, I've reached a lot of goals, but there is so much more I want to do and feel a need to do. My focus, energy, and motivation are often not what I want them to be." Jeff was struggling a little with the answer to a long-standing question of many successful people. Why don't I always do what I know I should do and even want to do? The answer to that question, I believe, begins with an understanding of the basics of our collective lives. At our core, I hope you will find it encouraging to realize that we human beings are far more alike than we are different. Nearly all of us want to help others, be connected to others, be active and healthy, and we all want to accomplish things in life and be valued for what we achieve. We are all born with an extraordinary ability and innate motivation to learn, love, help, and live. Most of us want to improve ourselves in various ways for our entire life. We have DNA that is 99% alike. We are far more alike as human beings than we are different, even if we are of different races and gender. Just think about it. Unless you have had an accident, surgery, or were born with a specific abnormality, you have a spleen. I have a spleen. Our spleens are in the same place in our bodies and function in pretty much the same way. You have fingernails. I have fingernails. You have 2 ears located on either side of your head. So do I. Our similarities abound anatomically, physiologically, and in behavioral ways that are hard to define fully. Perhaps our greatest similarity is that we are finite creatures, living in a world of infinite possibilities and combinations. And all of that is spread against a backdrop of history, the current moment, and eternity. Furthermore, we all live in a world in which the sun rises and sets each day. We all have a basic routine that involves waking, eating, working, and sleeping. And most people seem to have some difficulty, at least at some point in their lives, staying motivated, energized, and focused. The question, why don't I do what I want to do, is a very common question asked by the vast majority of people. Thrivers and strivers both suffer from it. There are two answers that I encourage people to explore. The first answer lies in a greater awareness of your uniqueness. Even though you are mostly like the rest of humanity, you are also one of a kind. You are a composite of hundreds of factors that are aligned and proportionately unique. Explore your uniqueness. It holds many clues as to why you don't stay as focused and energized as you want to be. Know your rhythm and capacity. Are you aware that even one-cell organisms, such as bacteria, have a built-in 24-hour rhythm? The flow of energy is universal, and while we are mostly alike, we each have a distinctive flow of energy, often called a biorhythm. Some people are night owls. Others are early birds. Some people need 9 hours of sleep a night to function at their best. Others do well with 7. Some people process certain nutrients more efficiently and quickly than others. They have a higher metabolism or lower metabolism than the norm. Every person faces the challenge in a day of discovering their optimal biological rhythm and then living within that rhythm for maximum productivity, energy, and effectiveness. In addition to the rhythms of a day, we have a built-in human rhythm when it comes to a week. We are creatures who need times of relaxation every week in order to stay at our best. Think moon cycles and the rising and falling of tides. According to the fullness of the moon, our bodies are mostly water, subject to the pull of gravity, and it only makes sense that certain biorhythms are impacted by gravitational forces that we rarely give pause to consider. And frankly, most of us are not in touch with our bodies to the point that we fully recognize all that influences us. There is very often a physical reason for our lack of energy, and that can be a direct cause for our lack of ability to remain focused and motivated. We are wise to get in touch with ourselves, not in order to blame our choices and behavior on physical or natural causes, but to be aware of these influences so that we can take evasive or compensatory steps. In addition to the general way in which each of us is a unique one-of-a-kind entity, we also face unique circumstances and situations. We have a one-of-a-kind litany of events and encounters, and each event or encounter has a physical and emotional impact on our energy and motivation. People recovering from a major accident or illness. People reeling from an unexpected or unwanted divorce. People grieving the loss of a loved one. Are all people who are likely not going to be able to do all they want to do or believe they should do. They need to cut themselves some temporary slack and take concerted measures to rebuild their physical and emotional reserves so they can restore, renew, and rehabilitate their own reserves of energy and strength. They need to seek out extra measures of restoring their spiritual and emotional health. They need to pay special attention to the root causes for their lack of motivation. Back to Jeff. As a surgeon, he sometimes found himself at a hospital for as long as 40 hours at a stretch without sleep. He did his best to control his schedule and to eat and sleep with as much regularity as possible, but his schedule did not always seem to be his own to manage. Core concept: manage what you can manage. The challenge is to manage what you can manage. Start there. Managing what you can manage is often enough to compensate for what you cannot manage. In seeking to manage your day and to make changes that will occur daily, you need to address how your particular body is wired. Know your rhythms and know your capacities. How much food do you actually need in a day? How much water? How much sleep? How much of which nutrients do you need? And if you are lacking in some vital nutrients, do you know which ones and how to get them? Are you exercising daily and sufficiently to release stress and gain strength? Are you taking medications in the right dosages? Most charts related to height, weight, and physical capacity are based upon averages. A 5'3" woman and a 6'7" man should not be consuming the same calories or taking medications at identical dosages. Are you in sync with what you need to sustain a positive, upbeat outlook on life? These are questions only you can answer, but they are questions worthy of answering. Part of the reason you don't do what you want to do may have to do with very practical physiological functions in your body. The above factors related to food, sleep, exercise, and medications are things you can manage. Start there. The facts associated with your unique physical and emotional makeup should always be taken into consideration as you move to part 2 of the answer related to focus and motivation, your decision-making skills, decisions and choices. I recently heard about a man who said, "Life is a series of decisions and their consequences." While I don't know anyone who would disagree with that statement, few people seem to see that their personal life in any given day often boils down to a series of sequential choices and decisions, and their consequences. In many cases, the choices and decisions not only produce immediate consequences, but one of the foremost consequences is that choices and decisions build upon one another and, in many ways, prescribe future choices and decisions. A choice is a decision, and all decisions involve choices. In a broad sense, choices and decisions are good or bad because of the outcomes they produce. Stop to consider. When you go to bed at night, do you choose to watch late-night television, or do you turn off the light and go to sleep? When you wake in the morning, what are your first thoughts? How are you choosing to think? When you arrive at work, what is the first action you take? Are you prepared to launch into high-value work, or do you allow a slow start? In the break room at work, do you grab a donut or Greek yogurt? At the department store, do you buy a new gadget on a whim, or keep your money in your pocket in anticipation of something you have been saving for? Do you leave work with thoughts of what you've accomplished, or what remains undone? Upon arriving home from work, do you launch into dinner, eating like it's the end of the world, or do you lace on your walking shoes and go for a walk? Do you respond to your significant other, pet, or child with? Patience or impatience? All of these questions point to very simple routine choices and decisions that people make every day, often without genuine intention or forethought. A high percentage of people react to life. They go with the flow around them and make instant choices without pausing to consider consequences or long-term impacts. The key bit of awareness required of you is recognizing your own decision-making style, the unique factors that surround your choices. Are your choices made on a foundation of solid values and beliefs? Is your decision-making reactionary or intentional and thoughtful as you make choices? Have you developed an attitude of what will be, will be? Or do you firmly believe that what will be is related to who I am and what I decide? You do know the right choices to make. Let me give you a ray of encouragement. People who ask, why don't I do what I want to do, or what I know I should do, are admitting at one level that they do know the right things to do. That's a big plus. A truly clueless person doesn't ask, why don't I do what I desire to do? A truly thoughtless person doesn't question his or her lack of focus or motivation. So give yourself some solid points on this account. All of these questions point to very simple routine choices and decisions that people make every day, often without genuine intention or forethought. A high percentage of people react to life. They go with the flow around them and make instant choices without pausing to consider consequences or long-term impacts. The key bit of awareness required of you is recognizing your own decision-making style, the unique factors that surround your choices. Are your choices made on a foundation of solid values and beliefs? Is your decision-making reactionary or intentional and thoughtful as you make choices? Have you developed an attitude of what will be, will be? Or do you firmly believe that what will be is related to who I am and what I decide? You do know the right choices to make. Let me give you a ray of encouragement. People who ask, why don't I do what I want to do, or what I know I should do, are admitting at one level that they do know the right things to do. That's a big plus. A truly clueless person doesn't ask, why don't I do what I desire to do? A truly thoughtless person doesn't question his or her lack of focus or motivation. So give yourself some solid points on this account. Through my years of coaching and researching working adults in a variety of disciplines, I have often asked clients these three questions. 1. To be better at work and in your personal life, do you know what you might do or should do? Every person has said yes. 2. Do you know why you aren't doing the activities you should do at a level you could do them? Again, every person has said yes. They gave different answers, but each person identified at least one reason why they weren't doing what they knew they could do or should do. Some said lack of time. Some cited lack of money. Some saw themselves as too tired or physically sick, and a few blamed another person for standing in their way. 3. Do you know someone who has less time and faces greater challenges, and yet still does what you could or should do to a greater degree of regularity than you? Again, every person has said yes, including Jeff. I'm not going to tell you what Jeff's answers were, but let me assure you that once we got down to this level of analysis, Jeff clearly already knew what he needed to do in order to live the life he was pursuing. Socrates once said, "My way toward the truth is to ask the right questions." I'm with Socrates. So the question I now ask, as question number 4, is this: to what degree do you want to be focused, motivated, healthy, and successful? And question number 5 is a quick follow-up. To what degree do you think you deserve to be or can be more focused, motivated, healthy, or successful? You can add any other objective of your choice to that list. You might add wealthy, educated, in a loving relationship, spiritually strong, influential, or any number of other traits or goals. Do you think you are capable of having that, doing that, or becoming that? Do you think you are worthy of something greater, finer, more beneficial? From my years of personal coaching, I have concluded that a primary reason many people have trouble staying focused and motivated tends to be because they don't believe they can do something, receive something, or earn something they think they need. And in other cases, they don't believe they deserve a brighter tomorrow. The net result of thinking that you can't change or that you shouldn't receive greater rewards is the same. People give up before they reach their goals. The self-determination theory. One of my favorite theories related to self-motivation, willpower, and overcoming procrastination is called the self-determination theory. This theory contends that a person's innate nature is to be motivated, optimistic, and productive. If a person doesn't feel that way, then the person is simply not getting what he or she needs. Unsatisfied needs create powerful and invisible barriers that stand between what a person wants to be and what he perceives that he is or is capable of being. The greater the need, and the longer it goes unmet, the greater the force against the person pushing him back, holding him down, or keeping him from making what seems to be an increasingly difficult effort. Unmet needs hammer at our basic sense of self-worth and value. For a person to attempt to meet a need, that person must first believe that he is worthy of having the need met and that the need can be met. Without those basic beliefs, the person will not try, at least not fully. In not trying, he negates any hope of having the need met. The good news is that when a person starts to satisfy more of the basic needs he feels, the more these barriers turn into stepping stones. The meeting of needs compels a person to seek to address and conquer more needs. A positive force is put into motion. Core concept: positive motion creates positive emotion. To change your day, remember, before you will take steps to change your day, you must believe that you can change your day, and believe that when you do, you will deserve to have a better day. What you decide will set you up to make choices and decisions that you can make, and that only you can make. Thrivers and strivers alike suffer the question, why don't I do what I know I should and want to do? Thrivers just have a better mental approach and daily system that fuels their motivational needs. If you are willing to try, then you need to take these 3 steps. 1. Reflect on your own makeup and the rhythms of life that impact you. Do a little self-analysis that includes identifying the best times of day for your most productive and creative work, identifying your own flow of physical energy during a day, identifying any prevailing external factors that may be sapping your energy or preoccupying your mind and emotions, either temporary or semi-permanent factors. 2. Make a list of 3 things you know you should do every day. 3. Make a list of changes you think might be made to ensure that you get those changes accomplished daily. Nobody knows you as well as you. Chapter 8. The Pursuit of Patterns. All options that appear on our path in life eventually compel us to make a decision. Failing to make a decision is a decision to not choose. When it comes to changes we want to make, whether at work, in the status of our physical or emotional health, in our finances, in our relationships, or in any other area of life, we each inevitably reach a point where we must decide to try, and then specifically decide what we will do. I call these decision points mini moments of truth. These are like little personal flashpoints that reveal to us what we must do if we want to move forward in life. The overarching truth is that we do not make choices in a vacuum. Various forces come into play that lead us to favor one choice over another, and to transform the choices we make into real-life behaviors. The fork in the road is rarely like Robert Frost's 2 roads diverging in a yellow wood. Rather, we nearly always face a 3-pronged decision-making fork. 1. Yes, proceed, make the change. 2. No, ignore the opportunity to change, maintain the status quo. 3. Wait and check again later. In other terms, we face a moment when we take action, stay put, or procrastinate. Let me insert a word about procrastination. There are times when it is wise to wait in making a decision, a choice that involves others, or that is related to a work task. It may not be the right time to set a goal, sell a stock, buy a company, or launch a particular campaign in the work arena or in any other community venture organization. However, when it comes to the setting of one's personal agenda and charting one's daily patterns, there is rarely a legitimate reason not to begin. But you may say, I can't exercise right now because I have a torn muscle. In truth, you can exercise in ways that don't require that muscle to be at full strength. But you may say, I can't get up an hour earlier to get a jump start on my day. In truth, you can set the alarm for an hour earlier and make a corresponding decision to go to bed an hour earlier at night. I could give numerous examples, but you get the point. There's always something you can do today to start making progress, to start building momentum. Therefore, in the realm of making personal choices to improve and decisions related to changing your day, procrastination is essentially a no decision. The fork in the road at the personal decision-making level regarding personal change is nearly always a clue-cut yes or no choice. You will choose to make a change, or you won't. There is, however, a 3-prong model that is appropriate for personal change, and it applies to virtually everybody. It is rooted in the research of B.J. Fogg, a noted behavior change researcher and professor at Stanford University. He believes that there are 3 things necessary for a person to take action: motivation, ability, trigger. M plus A plus T equals action. All 3 must be present simultaneously. For example, if you are tired of being stressed and rushed in the mornings and you desire a calmer and more positive morning routine, you are wise to consider waking up 30 minutes earlier. For this to happen, you must have a motivating reason to do something. It may be that you've missed one too many commuter trains, or that you have left behind something important on too many mornings in your mad dash to get out the door. You need to believe that you have the ability to do it. You must have a trigger in place to help you do it. I am a fan of Fogg's work, but I have developed my own set of 4 core requirements that I have come to see as vital for people who are attempting to thrive or sustain a thriving way of life in a high-demand job or work culture. Figure 8.1 shows the core 4. The core 4. 1. Meaning. You must have a reason underlying what you choose to do, and especially as you seek to make changes. There must be a clear and meaningful WHY that you could recite on cue. 2. Confidence. You must believe you can behave as you desire, or that you can learn to make the change. 3. Energy. You must have sufficient physical and emotional energy to undertake and sustain an activity or change. Let me say 2 things about energy here. First, as you perceive the way you want to structure or strategize a good day, you are likely to put too many good tasks into that day initially. You will be wise to limit yourself to just a few tasks or even a singular behavior that are essential, in line with your values, goals, and beliefs. The fewer the behaviors that you seek to build into your definition of a good day, the less energy you will need to get those behaviors molded into a pattern. Second, don't beat yourself up if you don't see yourself as having much energy. Your feelings of exhaustion, stress, of being out of balance, or of being worn out are likely what has led you to read this book. Energy will come increasingly as you work on motivation, confidence, and patterns. Sufficient to the day are the activities thereof, the factors and patterns described in the remaining chapters of this book are not designed to deplete energy or to exhaust all of your energy resources, but rather to build energy. 4. Patterns. For lasting motivation and energy, it isn't sufficient to trigger the start of a behavior. You must establish patterns that consistently trigger the desired behaviors. Patterns help triggers and behaviors to become self-sustaining or self-fueling. B.J. Fogg advises that if you want to maximize behavior change, you should put hot triggers in the path of motivated people. I agree and would add that if you want those behaviors to become lasting, if not habitual, they need to be encased in daily patterns. What a pattern does for you. Julie and her husband were scheduled to leave for a vacation in Hawaii in 2 days. Julie, however, did not want to go. She said to me, "Andy, Hawaii is my favorite place to vacation. My husband and I need some time together. I knew we would likely have a very good time, but I'm really in a good pattern right now. I've been doing things I know I should do on a daily basis. My work is going well. My health and exercise patterns are good. My attitude is good. I'm afraid that if I go on vacation right now, I'll lose the momentum I've built up. I don't want to revert to my old ways." I encouraged her to see that she could maintain her new patterns, even in a different environment that had somewhat different tasks and activities. Julie and I especially explored the ways in which a pattern had given her strength to stay motivated. Motivation, of course, is momentum in disguise. I shared with her this core concept. Core concept. Think about it so you don't have to. Think about it. In my presentations to some audiences, I show a series of 5 images that each have gray and black dots. The first image has many more gray dots than black, and then as the sequence progresses, the percentage of dots shifts so that the final image has many more black dots than gray. I ask, in all 5 images taken together, are there more gray dots or black dots? More than 90% of the people say there are more black dots. In fact, there are more gray dots than black in the 5 images. But because the last image has so many black dots, a tendency called recency bias kicks in. The audience members are influenced by what they experienced most recently. When I show all 5 images simultaneously, rather than in a sequence, almost half of the group will guess correctly that there are more gray dots. Even so, the image with predominantly black dots that is perceived last in a sequence is a powerful cue that leads the other half of the audience to see black as the most dominant color across all 5 images. Here's how the phenomenon plays out in a daily habitual pattern. When a person has a good day filled with positive patterns and cues a day in which the person does all those things he or she thinks he should do daily, that good day is held in memory as a highly positive incentive or trigger to continue or replicate the behavior of the previous day. If a pattern has become entrenched to the point that it is habitual, this means that a person automatically responds according to the pattern in an instinctual way. The pattern has become ingrained and will continue even if environmental or circumstantial factors change. I asked Julie, do you believe you have developed new patterns that have become habits? Do you think that these patterns are almost instinctual? You do them almost without thinking about them? Yes, she said. Then I encouraged her, go to Hawaii, Julie. Trust that the good patterns you've established will be continued there. Trust that, even if they stray a bit, when you return home and restart your current daily way of life, it will trigger your positive patterns to take up where you left off. A pattern creates a tailwind. One morning, my wife, Naomi, was running late and she couldn't find her keys. She became almost frantic. She was late. The keys were missing. At that point, our 4-year-old daughter, Camille, said, "Mama, sit down." Naomi is a very patient person, and even in a rush she did what our daughter asked. Camille then pulled Naomi's hair back and leaned in to look in her way. She looked and looked, and finally Naomi said, "Honey, what are you doing?" Camille replied, "I don't know what is wrong. I've seen this done before and it worked." What Camille had seen done before was the coin trick that parents have done for hundreds of years, where they magically pull a coin or some other small object from there. Camille was looking for magic in her childlike thinking. She fully expected to be able to pull keys from her mother's ear. The things we seek to build into our day are a little magical. A trigger that prompts an ingrained pattern can save us lots of time and hassle. Indeed, it can help create a tailwind for us that is both motivating and energy-producing. Consider the fact that my wife, at that time, did not have a pattern for where she put her car keys when she entered the house. She might toss them in her purse, lay them on the kitchen desk, stick them in a tray on her dresser in the bedroom, or leave them in a coat pocket. Seconds, and sometimes frantic minutes, were spent every day looking for keys. Once Naomi decided to adopt a new pattern, a change in how she dealt with her keys, things changed. She came to regard as the opening of the kitchen door as a trigger that prompted a set pattern of behavior. She kept her keys in her hand until she put the keys in a small decorative dish that was placed just a couple of steps from the door. Simple, but effective. Not only did Naomi always know where her keys were, but I knew, and so did the girls. The result was no more rushing, no more stress produced by rushing, no more confusion, and no more I know I should but don't twinges of self-incrimination. Anytime a person falls short of meaning, or energy, or confidence, or experiences a failure of pattern, a headwind is generated. Life becomes just a little harder and a little more stressful. On the other hand, when a person moves into a situation with great meaning, sufficient energy, and high confidence in a pattern is in place that helps a person act without thinking about acting, there's a tailwind that makes life easier and less stressful. If an alarm clock triggers you not only to get up, but also to lace on your walking shoes, and if lacing on your walking shoes becomes a second trigger that says, go out for a walk down to the park and back, then a pattern is being established that becomes instinctual to you. The resulting behavior gives you more confidence, more motivation, and more energy as you move through the rest of a morning. It sets you up for ongoing positive behaviors. Carrying this one step further, the person finds it easier to do other good-for-me behaviors after that first set of good behaviors has been completed. It actually seems to take less effort and energy to do the right things as the day progresses. A lower rate of perceived exertion. In the world of human performance research, the concept of rate of perceived exertion is often measured to help a person see how much effort or energy that person believes he is using in order to do a task or manifest a particular behavior. For example, if a person is asked to run at a rate of 6 miles per hour on a treadmill for several minutes and is asked how much energy the task is taking, they will say something like, it feels like an 8 out of a possible on the effort scale. With that as a baseline, a coach, physiologist, or psychologist might give the person basic tools and physical and mental training. After only a few weeks of running, when the test is given again and the person is asked how it feels to run for several minutes at a 6 mile per hour rate, the person is likely to say it felt like a 4 on the scale, perhaps even lower. The result is that the body and mind have adapted to the new pattern, and the person perceives that the activity takes significantly less effort. The interesting aspect to this kind of study is that the change is not just in the person's physical strength and conditioning, but also it is a change in their perception. People who are strivers and strugglers very often feel as if they are facing an almost constant headwind in their lives. Often everything feels hard to them. They have a very high daily RPE. They feel as if they are continually bucking a trend, trying to overcome a hurdle, or in a race against time that never stops. This state leaves them consistently asking, why don't I want to do what I know I should? Thrivers, on the other hand, are those who have established patterns that consistently fuel the call for and feel as if they are running with a tailwind. They feel calm, free, and energized instead of running into a headwind or as if they are in a straitjacket trying to get free. If you are feeling oppressed in any way about your daily habits, take a long look at the core four I described earlier. Are you truly motivated to act in a positive way? Do you have a good reason for doing what you do? Are you seeking to make changes in your day that are for a good purpose, aimed at a good goal? Are these positive reasons and purpose clear to you? Are you fueling your body with the right things for physical and emotional energy? Do you have enough stamina to do what you are hoping to do in the new pattern for your day? Are you confident that you can do what you need to do or feel you should do? Or are you reasonably confident you can learn what to do? Are you going through the course of your new patterns in a way that is engraving a pattern into your mind? Are you using triggers to create patterns that can give you a tailwind? If you feel that life has a very high RPE, one or more of these four elements is either missing or is out of whack. Isolate which. 1. Have you seen the movie Jaws? It was my father's favorite movie, and every time he concluded that there was nothing good to watch on television, out came the VHS of Jaws. I have seen that movie more often than any other. If you have not seen it, Jaws is the story of a gigantic shark that eats people. I could probably recite the dialogue word for word, but let me focus on my favorite part in the movie. Quinn, the salty, angry, grizzled shark hunter, finds Jaws out in the middle of the ocean. The way Quinn hunts and captures sharks is by shooting them with a harpoon that has a rope attached to a big plastic barrel filled with pressurized air. The barrel is hard to sink, and the more the shark attempts to run or dive deep with a buoyant barrel in tow, the more energy the shark exerts. Eventually, the shark wears out and becomes easy prey for Quinn. Most sharks Quinn has encountered aren't strong enough to pull more than 1 or 2 barrels underwater, but Jaws does this easily. So Quinn and his crew shoot a third harpoon tied to a third barrel of pressurized air. To their amazement, Jaws is also able to pull 3 barrels underwater. They shoot again a harpoon, attached to an unheard-of 4th barrel. Jaws takes the 4th barrel underwater, but not for long. Eventually, this much resistance is too much even for a supersized monster. Think of yourself as Quinn. The core 4 concepts of motivation, energy, confidence, and patterns are the harpoons and barrels. No bad habit, lack of willpower, or self-doubt can last if your day is consistently fueling the core 4. Stick these barrels into your day and you will sink your fluctuating willpower, focus, and energy issues, and you will rise to greater success. When all 4 barrels are in full force and you are experiencing a true tailwind to your day, you are likely going to find it easy to pick up the phone and make the call, that one that you previously found so hard to make after the blast hit in the middle of the afternoon. Reach for a healthy raw food snack rather than a cookie, which you previously would never have done when you felt the need for something to munch. Dash off a quick thank you email rather than give into a round of e-readers solitaire, which is what you might have chosen as a means of overcoming boredom or work fatigue. Pick up the papers scattered across your desk and sort, file, or toss them before leaving the office, which formerly seemed like something difficult at the end of a 10-hour workday. None of the tasks or decisions described above are major or take extraordinary energy or amounts of time. But tasks as simple as making a call, writing a quick note, organizing a pile of paper, or making a healthy food choice can seem very difficult to a person who is bucking a headwind. The fact for most people in the above examples is that the task, the call, the note, the paper sort, the snack is going to have to be done eventually, and when that time comes, it will be more resented and seem to take longer than the few seconds involved. You will finish the task and think, why did I wait on this? Remember, the feeling of why don't I want to do what I know I should is often a sign that you are walking into a motivation headwind. Why put yourself through that? Why set yourself up for an oppressive, burdensome feeling that life is harder than it really is? Ultimately, it is so much easier to change your day and establish patterns that energize you fully and keep you motivated all the way to bedtime. It is so much easier to feed your mind the right motivational messages, fuel your body and emotions with the right nutrients, bolster your confidence with small accomplishments, and live out instinctual habits of simply doing the right things than to hurl yourself into a day relying on willpower and hoping that somehow the pieces are going to automatically fall into place for you like the right color balls into the roulette wheel. To change your day, remember, the changes that build momentum are rooted in decisions, not additional tasks. The building of a pattern does not require you to make a list of things to add to your daily schedule. In most instances, you will simply be adjusting what you are already doing or want to do in a way that becomes more habitual. Thriver's daily way of life fuels the core for and creates a motivational tailwind. Now is the time to ask yourself, 1. Do I have a strong reason for wanting to do certain things in my day? Do the things that I think I should do have value and good purpose? 2. Do I have a base of energy for doing what I want to do in a day? If the answer is maybe not, pare down what you want to do in a day so you can feel more accomplished and fueled by the momentum you build. 3. Do I feel confident that I can do or I can learn to do what I want to do in a given day? 4. Am I willing to develop triggers that produce patterns? If the answer is yes to these 4 sets of questions, you're ready to launch. Chapter 9. Breaking down the change process. When I was in graduate school, I was broke. Not a little short, but downright broke. Many days I scrounged under the cushions in my couch to try to come up with 79 cents to buy a bean burrito for lunch. Then one day a friend told me that he was making money as a substitute teacher. The light came on. Easy money. On my first day as a substitute teacher, an elementary school principal assigned me to a physical education class. I thought it was nice of the principal to give me an easy assignment. On my first day out, little did I know she was feeding me to the lions. The first thing an elementary PE teacher must do is have the students sit in a row on the baseline of a gym floor. As a group of kindergartners burst into the gym, I looked into one child's eyes and saw the odd combination of happiness and desperation that I had come to associate with someone who had been up all night drinking Turkish coffee. I asked the students, in a calm and inviting tone, to sit on the baseline. I even added please. They not only ignored me, but began to run around the gym in a faster and more chaotic pattern. I added a little volume. Okay. I need everyone to sit on the line. Nothing happened. Finally, I yelled, on the line, now. Two sweet little girls sat down on the line, but the other 21 children organized themselves to run in a circle around me, laughing as they ran. I'll spare you the next 10 minutes of my frustration. The only thing that seemed to work was when I picked out one child, caught him and sat him down on the line, and watched for a few seconds to ensure he did not get up. Then I grabbed another child, sat her down, and waited to ensure she stayed put, checked on the previous child, and then grabbed a third child. I didn't know what else to do, so I grabbed a fourth child, determined to get all 23 children seated on the line even if it took the full 30 minutes of gym class. And then something interesting happened around the fifth child. It was as if chaos noticed a pattern developing. I kid you not, the rest of the children started sitting down on their own. It took me 10 minutes to get the first 3 students seated. All the while, a vein seemed about ready to burst in my head from high blood pressure. But then, it only took 3 minutes to get the rest of the class organized. Not only did the feeling of pressure leave my brain, but I smiled. I was motivated and energized to finish the time period with a rousing activity that children loved. I went home from that first day of substitute teaching absolutely exhausted. I was so tired I did something I have never done before or since I feel asleep while sitting at a stoplight. I also learned 2 great lessons that day. 1. I learned that if I could conquer the chaos generated by a group of kindergartners, I could conquer any other type of chaos that might emerge in my life. 2. I learned that to get control of both chaos and complexity, the key is to focus on one thing at a time, one child at a time, one behavior at a time, and one day at a time. Core concept: pick one. Resist the urge to change your whole life. Pick one change you desire for your day. Make it a realistic goal, and then pursue it until you tackle it and hold it down. Don't take on more than you can tackle and hold down. Too many changes are counterproductive. Take on what you can take on, and then add a change only as you are ready to add one. Focus on just one change. The number one New Year's resolution across decades and across the United States is lose weight. People think this is a singular change. It is not. To lose weight, a person will likely need to eat healthier, eat smaller quantities, and become more physically active. That's 3 changes, not one. Focus on one of the 3. If you choose eat healthier, you are still facing a change that has multiple facets. Eating healthier doesn't mean eating more lettuce and less grease. That may be one part of eating healthier, but a healthier eating pattern is likely to have many facets to it, such as drink more pure water and less of other beverages. Eat 5 to 6 small meals a day and make sure to have a bit of protein at each one. Eliminate most refined sugars, which can be found in processed foods, iced tea, and even salad dressings. Know the many terms for sugar that appear on processed food labels. Don't buy products with trans fats or partially hydrogenated fats listed among the ingredients. Read labels. Eat 5 servings of fresh fruits a day. Eat 5 servings of vegetables a day. The list goes on. Even in reading these 7 specific aspects of healthier eating, you may feel yourself clenching. That's a lot of change. That's difficult. After a few days, you are likely to conclude, this is too hard, and revert back to whatever old eating habits you have had in place for years, even decades. Consider, instead, what might happen if a person sets a New Year's resolution of drink a full glass of ice water every time I feel hungry. This is easy to do because you have a trigger and a positive pattern. Trigger, you feel hungry. Pattern, drink a glass of cold water. This trigger-our-pattern approach to change is very effective. It capitalizes on simplicity, cues, and behavioral momentum, gives a sense of accomplishment and increasing confidence, and can easily be connected to more meaningful changes. For example, this behavior makes it a lot easier to drink enough water to be healthier and maintain higher energy. One change. But, oh, the difference that change can make. What if the change is drink water only? One change. But that one change represents many changes in your health management. Drinking only water means eliminating fruit juices and sugar-laced sodas and other beverages, which can mean a significant decrease in total calorie count and a corresponding decrease in weight. If you decide your New Year's health resolution is going to be to exercise more, there are also numerous sub-changes required for most people. Try one change: wear walking shoes to work and carry dressier shoes in a tote bag. This one change will encourage you to do more walking around your office, to go out for a walk at noon, and perhaps even substitute part of a lunch hour for a walk. Trigger, it's lunchtime. Pattern, go for a walk. Or consider this one change: arrange to walk or cycle all or part of your way to work on Fridays. That one change has multiple benefits. Trigger, it's Friday. Pattern, ride my bike to work. I'm not negating the benefit of having a big goal. I also am not negating the value of defining the ultimate outcome you want to achieve. What I am saying is that for you to implement a change that works on a daily basis, you need to break that big goal down and choose a piece that can be accomplished in a day. You need to be able to fit a goal into a daily pattern or mini pattern that is workable and motivating at the daily level. There is a tremendous benefit in breaking down goals. Doing this makes a day seem less complex, and in checking off the accomplishment of even a very small goal, you will experience a motivating, energizing effect. Your confidence will grow. Above all, you will feel more in control of your own goals, your own time, your own impulses, and your own progress. Control is vital to the entire process of personal change. One task at a time, one change at a time, one portion of work at a time. These are small changes that fall readily into a daily schedule. I once provided research for a PBS affiliate in Arkansas on a program titled Fighting Fat. I was co-host for the show, and my job was to interview guests before taping. The guests were overweight people having trouble with losing weight. One guest, who was 75 pounds overweight, said, "Andy, I really don't eat that much." I dug deeper and discovered that what she really meant was that she didn't eat that often. She would skip meals during the day, proudly eating only 2 meals a day, but she had her second meal at night, right before going to bed, and she consumed a massive amount of calories at that meal. That's a sure way to gain fat as fast as humanly possible. She not only needed to graze her way through 6 small meals a day, but make sure those small meals were truly small. Often a task or goal has been broken down into something of a bite-sized piece, but is not given sufficient time for the chewing and digesting of even that small task. In setting up a sequence of changes, make sure that small tasks are given sufficient time, and that whenever possible, a string of small tasks are sequenced so you can build some momentum in doing them. Anticipate the stages of change. There seem to be several stages for all types of change, including changing your day. If you are aware of them at the outset, you are likely to be able to persevere through them. Stage 1. Make a quality decision to change. Put emphasis on the word quality. Change should never be approached casually or half-heartedly. If a change is important to make, it should be given the mental importance it deserves. Committing to a new change is fast and often too easy. Being committed is a different story. The time required for Stage 1, usually less than a minute. Stage 2, you begin to make the change and feel clunky and awkward. You face resistance, usually not from yourself alone, but sometimes from others. The thought of quitting buzzes around your head like a fly, taunting, "This isn't going to work." At times, that fly seems to sail into your mouth, and you swallow it, choking and truly irritated. What to do? Spit out the fly and keep going. At some point in this stage, unpredictable in time but predictable, in that it will happen, you will begin to think this might just work. These positive thoughts tend to increase in intensity and frequency. At that point, you feel a determination to endure, to continue with whatever effort is required. The time required for Stage 2, usually between 3 days and 3 weeks. Stage 3, you keep plugging away, and much of the time, you feel strong motivation and confidence related to your path and your progress. Interruptions can still occur, and they can be highly disruptive. But if you work through the interruptions and return to the pattern you are establishing, you can and will grow stronger in your resolve and in your execution of the pattern. The time required for Stage 3, 3 days to 3 months. Did you ever watch an episode of a television show called Super Nanny? Joe, a trained nanny, takes the most obnoxious children and turns them into models of self-discipline. How did she do this? In essence, she helped the parents and children change their day by creating a consistent daily schedule and made them stick with it until it stuck. When these children were first forced to abide by Joe's rules and schedule, they acted like wild stallions put into a fenced area. They bashed against the walls, yelled, leaped about in pure rage, and threw terrible tantrums. But after a while, the rules and structure gave them a sense of comfort, so much so that they willingly kept the rules and schedule, and even grew to want the rules and schedule to stay in place. Be aware that the new changes you are seeking to implement in your day may be confining and demanding at first. Your old habits may rear up like wild stallions. Stick with your plan. Keep at it. Be firm with yourself. You'll find it easier as you stay consistent to the point where you truly come to enjoy the process and take great joy in the rewards. Stage 4. In this stage, you become consistent enough in your pattern that you start finding ways to integrate and adapt your new change to other segments of your day and other areas of your life as a whole. You willingly are doing what you believe you should do, and you become strong in countering those who try to stop you or discourage you from living out your new change. Psychologists call this phase orgasmic integration, and yes, it does feel good. Maybe not that good, but still really good. The good news is that you can experience it in public without getting arrested. The time required to experience stage 4, 3 weeks to 66 days. The commonly held belief that it takes 21 days to form a habit has come under fire from researchers recently. The new estimate is closer to 66 days. This could be discouraging, but let me let you in on a little secret. You can't get to 66 days without getting through this day. Getting through today with positive momentum leads to tomorrow being a bit better, and soon you'll look up and it's past 66 days and you are miles down the road toward your goal with the winds of change at your back, thinking, of course I'm doing this. It feels awesome. Even so, I think the 21 or 66-day estimates are a bit misleading. Sure, full integration happens pretty far down the path, but I've seen people achieve or recapture a highly motivated and optimistic state as quickly as in 10 days, and sometimes even faster. It just might take a bit longer for it to be orgasmic. Of course, it depends on the action you are implementing and how strong the triggers are. I've seen exercise, when done right, swing someone's motivation to where their want increased significantly in as few as 3 days. I worked with one client who was having trouble leaving work at work and was often thinking of her work during her personal time, and it was making her more anxious and less present with her significant other. I helped her build a habit of journaling into her day. We worked through the basic way to journal and the time that might be optimal for her to journal during a given day. Her trigger was 5 p.m. The pattern was to pull out her journal and outline her top 3 tasks for tomorrow. She was surprised at how effective this was at helping her leave her worry about work at work. After one day, she was hooked and felt highly motivated to journal. The next day, she is still journaling daily after 8.5 years. It is such a built-in part of her day that she no longer even puts it on a list of things to do. It is as natural to her as brushing her teeth or putting on lipstick in the morning. I've seen people learn to love Brussels sprouts and, well, I've never met anyone who learned to love Brussels sprouts. Tolerate, perhaps. Those things are nasty. The point is that many people who are making changes in their day find that they feel motivated after only a few days of initiating a new pattern in their life. Remember, motivation is an experimental lesson. Full integration of a change may take several weeks, but I've seen some people gain or recapture a high level of motivation and optimism in as little as 3 days, and I've seen a few people change even faster. The degree to which you progress to high motivation and high energy is going to depend upon the nature of the change you are seeking to implement, the number of changes you are seeking to put into a new pattern in a day, and the strength of the triggers that initiate change behaviors. 2 caveats are worth highlighting. 1. Most of the time, a person doesn't move through these 4 stages in a smooth, tight, time predictable, all linear. Fashion. Change of any type is a bit messier than some researchers want to admit. You may jump back and forth between two stages or skip a stage entirely. If that happens, it's okay. 2. No matter what you choose to change, you will find that the most important day in the change process is today. Stay focused in the day and face tomorrow. Tomorrow. To change your day, pick one thing you want to change. Just one thing. And chase that change until you have fully integrated it into your life.